Let's create physically accurate halation effect, as that is an important part of film emulation. And then let's compare that effect to DaVinci Resolve's native halation effect and the halation effect inside DHancer's paid plugin. And let's see if our effect is better or not. And in the end of the video, you will get this effect for free. Let's go. If you're not aware what am I talking about, here's a nice website that there's a collection of movie stills from movies that were shot on film, so they have actual halation. And this diagram tells all we need to know about halation. So halation is an analog effect or an artifact that happens when a light from the lens hits the film. Very bright light penetrates through the film and hits the back of the camera or the anti-halation layer and bounces back and exposes surrounding parts of the film, making the bright areas bleed over, first in red and then in red plus a bit of green, and that causes the colors to be warm red. And as the exposure increases and the bleeding gets over even to the blue dye layer, it results in bright areas to increase in size. The type of film used in the camera and the color processing affects the strength and color of the halation, but this is the basic principle. So from this we get three characteristics of halation. The first one is the color. The color goes from red to warm red to white, as you can see in these trees or in these candles. The second characteristic is that the intensity of the light affects how strong the halation is. For example, here you can see how only the specular highlights and the very bright sky has halation, but not that much, for example, on this area where the white door doesn't bleed to the surrounding areas as it's not that bright. And here we can see how the fluorescent tubes do have halation, but not as much as the headlamps of the train, as the light beam hits the camera directly. The third characteristic is that when a light source is very bright and the halation reaches all three dye layers, the size of the light source actually increases. Here we can see an example of the gaps in the wall seem to increase in size as the exposure increases. So if we want to create an accurate halation effect, we need to model light behavior at least somewhat physically accurately. To give you a better understanding of what I mean, here's a car driving along a highway, and here's a piece of white paper. We intuitively know that the headlights of the car are much brighter than the white piece of paper, but in the video file or in the picture that you're seeing right now, they actually have the same luminance value. So both of them are just pure white. So in this picture, the computer cannot distinguish between the very bright headlights and the white piece of paper. That distinction happens inside your mind. To the computer, both of these light sources or surfaces are equal bright. So we need to show the computer somehow that there is a difference. To do that, we go back to the log color space that this footage was captured in. Here we can see a clear difference between the headlights and the white piece of paper, as the log encoding has more dynamic range and therefore the ability to distinguish between bright and super bright surfaces. Then we need to map these values to a physically accurate color space, which is something we call a scene-referred color space or linear color space. And in this color space, the white piece of paper and the headlights start to look the same again, but that is only because we are now looking at this through a monitor that is not capable of displaying scene-referred data. The headlight here actually is not pure white, it is super white. It is potentially hundreds of times brighter than the piece of white paper. And this color space is where we want to create our halation effect in, as this color space models light behavior physically accurately. Let me show you how to do the effect in DaVinci Resolve. So here we have the same car, and we have these color swatches and this black and white gradient. And all of these are in log encoding color space, in this case ACCCT. So let me show you how to create this effect. First, we need to transform our footage from log into a scene-referred color space. And here you can start seeing how the headlights and the sky and a lot of things are clipping, and those are actually not clipping, they're just now super whites. And then we blur the super whites with the red channel. This RGB splitter splits the signal to different film layers. And here we create the warm glow, like we go from red to warm red to white, and this is just a bit fine-tuning it a bit. And then this white is responsible partly to the eroding of the white areas. And that's our halation effect. Now it looks very odd because we are looking at scene referred data. And in the last node, we go back to our log encoding. And now this is actually a compound node. So if I back up from there, so this is a compound node. So all of these nodes were inside this compound node. So this now is our halation effect. As you can see, if I turn it on and off, it creates the halation around the headlights and wherever there is bright light sources. Hi, it's Jonas from the future. I just wanted to say that you don't need to know how to do this thing. You will get this node tree for free in the end of the video. And this one is an ODT, so output device transform node, that takes our footage from the log encoding to Rec 709. And this one is a film emulation that I've created. I'll talk about these film emulation presets later on in some other YouTube video, so subscribe. And these are just all the native tools. And this creates a film emulation, very accurate film emulation. And the reason why I want to use film emulation here is that halation in real life never happens outside analog film. So it makes sense when we are emulating halation that we emulate all the other aspects of film as well, because it's part of film. And now this node is responsible for our halation. And you can see how it creates this halation around bright light sources. Then let's compare our effect to dehancer. So I'll turn our effect on and I'll drop dehancer on the signal path, turn it on. And here in the plugin, which is a very powerful film emulation plugin, I'll turn everything else off than the halation. So this is just doing the halation. Our film emulation happens here on this compound node. So right out of the gate, everything looks quite nice. The color is correct. We go from red to warm red to white. So that's correct. But you can see here that the strength of the effect is pretty much same around the skyline than it is around the headlights. So this effect doesn't seem to care about super whites. So it's not physically accurate. The second thing that is kind of odd is, well, this is not odd, this is just part of the super white thing, is that the headlight size is not growing. So the white is not eroding to all the dye layers, which is not physically correct. And then the oddities. The first thing is that here we have this teal blob, and the teal blob is glowing in red halation. And that shouldn't be possible in analog film. And then one thing is that the red seems to change. Here's off, here's on. The red seems to change a lot in its luminance. And you can see it here in the highlights as well, that the highlight has this warm color. On dehancer's tutorials, they say that this is actual part of the film actual film halation, but I think it's more like a bug in the algorithm. And then the last thing, which is kind of odd, is that here we have this glow effect, and this is actually an optical filter emulation that is part of the film emulation, and it makes these bright areas glow, have this glow around them. And when I turn dehancer on, it clamps those values. It clamps the super whites. So it doesn't like super whites, so it clamps them down. So it looks fine, but it's not physically accurate. Then let's take a look at DaVinci Resolve's halation effect. I'll turn the dehancer off, and let's turn DaVinci Resolve's native halation effect on. And here, the first thing is that we can see that the DaVinci Resolve's effect ignores super whites as well. The effect is as strong on the skyline as it's around the headlamps. If I turn the film animation off, you can see it's as strong pretty much everywhere. The second thing is that the light sources do not change in size. They same the, oh wait, it's this one. They do not change in size. And then the color is off. As you can see, these weird green halos around these light sources. And then these color swatches have weird glows on them. In general, I would say that DaVinci Resolve's native halation effect is more like some kind of a glow effect than actual halation emulation. Here's another comparison. This is our physically accurate halation effect. This is dehancer halation. And this is DaVinci Resolve's halation. The DaVinci Resolve halation, the roll-off is a bit off. You can see this kind of almost like a silhouette line around the character when we compare it to our physically accurate halation effect. This is another one. R halation is very strong on the sky, but toned down on the body of the astronaut. Dehancer is very strong on the sky, but it's oddly strong on the astronaut as well. And DaVinci Resolve's halation looks more like some kind of a glow filter. And here's another comparison. This is R halation, here's Dehancer, and here's DaVinci Resolve. And this is the last one. Here's R halation, here is Dehancer, and here is DaVinci Resolve. One drawback of R effect is that it's not so intuitive to change the size and the strength of this effect. So let me show you how to do that. So first thing is that in this compound node, if you go to the key tab and in the gain, you can change the strength by lowering the key or then increasing the key. By default, it's about 60%. Then if you dive into the compound node, here in this blur node and in this and this and this, you can change the size of these, how far the halation reaches. So for example, if you want to reach the red further, you can just bring this value higher and the red will reach higher, further, I mean. And here in the green, you can then change how the warm red effect reaches. And then here you can change the strength of the effect. So this one and this one is where you tweak these. And then the white with this, you can affect how much the size increases. And then here you select the log encoding space where you want to start from. By default, it's ACCT. But for example, if you use slog, then you go here and find slog3, for example. And then here you go back to slog3. There we go. And that's how you use it with different log spaces. By default, it's ACCT. But if your working color space is not ACCT, then you just choose the working color space from these settings there. And that's how it works. So would you like to get this effect for free? Here's a link, and down in the description, you get this effect and few other ready-made presets for this halation. And see you in the next video. These are, by the way, from my mother's garden. I got these today.